Fantastic Beats. 3 people, 3 tracks. We swap them, we talk about them. I'm Jack Tutor.
I'm Lizzie Maris.
And our guest this time is author of Appetite for Definition, an A to Z guide to rock genres. It's Ian King, the fabulous Ian King. Hello, Ian.
Hello. Hi, Jack.
Hi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got 3 tracks as per. Lizzie, you've brought one of them. So tell us all about it.
Okay, I will kick us off with a track by The Cars from their 1978 album, The Cars. The track is called Just What I Needed. So this is probably a bit of an unusual pick for me because it is pretty, I'm going to say it's pretty straight, male-orientated rock. It's about loving someone else. I think it does allude to it being a girl quite a lot. And it's just a really good rock song. It makes me feel really kind of drunk and simple and like love is a good thing and loving somebody is really exciting and that's all there is in the world. So I think this song, normally I dissect it a little bit more musically, but actually this song is a really, for me, like just a feeling of feeling like all is good in the world and love is a funny thing. So I'll tell you a little bit more about it because that's not enough. This song is actually sung by the bassist, not the lead vocalist, which I think is interesting because I think the vocals are a really nice standout feature of it because they're a little bit slack, a little bit chilled. I feel like the guy singing it is quite good looking. That's just a sort of, I don't know. This is kind of a rock song assumption.
Sure. Let's not do this on the air. Fine.
It's got super simple lyrics. It is about love. It's about wanting somebody and liking somebody. It's very kind of teenage and young. But what I really enjoy most is the riffs in this. So there's kind of, I feel like there's 2. There's the kind of synth riff, which is quite prominent throughout it and very kind of like, I suppose because this is coming into the 80s now. So yeah. This is just the 80s. Really lovely, juicy synth riff. But there's also the guitars as well that go dun, dun, I think you're just, and actually the guitars, for me, that's kind of the real vocalist in the track,
right?
Because that's the bit that you're punching along to. So I think that's kind of doing quite a lot of the work. There's a really fun solo in it. It's very anthemic. You're really waiting for the chorus. Like the verses, like any good rock song, the verses, you're like, whatever. Yeah. And the choruses are just brilliant. That's it. Also, you're listening to it on headphones. So I think what's really nice is the panning in this song. In the beginning, when you listen to it on headphones, you do really realise that the guitars are sort of like layered so that they're slightly out with each other, but that guitar really chugs at the beginning. And I only noticed that on the headphones.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a really lovely song that makes me feel very drunk. And I feel like that's all the analysis it needs because that's all there is to it. Jack, what did you think of this one?
So this was their debut single, wasn't it, from their first album?
Yeah, I think so.
Which is quite surprising, I thought. So I'm not super familiar with the Cars, but this sounds incredibly confident as like a debut single to come out with. Everyone's on like really swaggering form, like that synth line is. So we are not, Ian, we prevent ourselves from talking about the tracks in advance of this podcast, but we've both been singing the synth line around the house anyway because that's permitted, but it is just it's irresistible. The guitar solo I thought was very tight and very tasteful as well. There's a really cool bit in the third verse where the drummer switches the drum beat so that he's playing like the snare drum on the first beat instead, which is a nice little, I imagine him doing that in the rehearsal studio and them all going, oh, do that again. You can do that on the track. But I agree. I think the guitars being layered in the way that they are brings a bit of complexity to it. I think particularly when you're on headphones where you realise that there's one guitar holding down the chug and another which is allowed to be a bit more expressive with the opening and closing of the riff. It's almost got a more of a talkative kind of vibe to the way it's played. I'll be honest, so I hear you play this around the house all the time, and I wasn't sure who it was, but I thought, bloody hell, it sounds like a really, sometimes, I don't know how this is going to be taken, but it sounds like an early kind of Weezer demo or something.
Yeah.
Where it's got like that chugging riff, it's got kind of adolescent lyrical themes, it's got a corny synthesizer, Also, as well, what I think is nice is that it has got that naivety to it of kind of teen love, but it's played in a very professional way. Like, I think at least a couple of the members were like nearing their 30s at this point, so way past the point where they're like, what is this love thing, but obviously still singing about it, but playing it in a really boss way, which I thought was quite cool. So yeah, I mean, it's not my kind of song, but for the time that I had to listen to it for this research and this podcast, I thought it was good fun. So Ian, what do you reckon?
Yeah, when I saw that this was your selection, I immediately got so jealous, and I was like, "Oh, the song I chose is like so ponderous. I should have just picked like Heart-Shaped Box or something. I'm totally overthinking this." It's a great song. The synth riff is completely classic. The synth riff, I included it in the book as a bridge between the genres new wave and power pop, specifically just because of that.
Wow.
Yeah, just because of that synth riff, I think it's sort of like is the the bridge between new wave has, I mean, at least the American understanding is new wave has like synthesizers in it, and that's sort of what makes it new wave as opposed to punk or power pop.
Right.
It's such a great song. What you're saying about didn't Rick Ocasek, he worked with Weezer, right?
Did he really?
He produced he produced a few of Weezer's albums, if I'm remembering correctly.
Man, blimey.
Yeah.
That explains so much.
He did looks like he did the Blue album and the Green album.
Oh, wow.
That's insane.
Good spot, Jack.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
yeah,
very good spotting.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's I don't know, I think it also as well, I think it's when his voice is double tracked, he even sounds a bit like Rivers. I think that's what gave me that impression as well. But yeah, that keyboard is definitely like early Weezer. I feel like this is the kind of song that they're still very much wanting to write but not quite reaching in Weezer's case. But yeah, it's fancy. Good job, Lizzie.
Thanks. I think it's really interesting that you were like, I went for quite a ponderous song, because normally I also would, but I think I've done quite a few of these now, and I would not have picked this early on in this podcast because I really don't feel like it does represent what I usually like. So I'm kind of throwing it in there as like a let's all have a beer.
Well, as opposed to Dire Straits, because
I do like that. That was great.
That was a good track.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah.
Hey, no worries.
I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to feed. I guess you're just what I needed. Just what I needed. I needed someone to bleed.
Ian, let's go to your track.
Okay, yeah. So Ganger, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I actually had a question for you guys. I mean, are Ganger remembered much? The Scottish band, they're from the mid to late 90s. Are they remembered much over there? I mean...
I had no idea, but that doesn't tell you a lot. I wouldn't normally know this kind of stuff anyway. I don't know about you, Jack.
Well, I mean, I don't think Lizzie and I are old enough to have really experienced Ganger, like when we weren't listening to music that intentionally, like around the time that they would have been doing stuff. So I was born in 1990, Lizzie in 88. But I mean, obviously, having done a load of post-rock research, I don't remember them coming up a lot. So they're clearly not a band that people have said, okay, they were doing something that was really key that we need to remember for posterity for the sake of the kind of mapping out the genre, But which I think is really interesting, because I think they were, I think they definitely are now, I guess, have fallen into like a lost classic. But if people, I really appreciated the opportunity to kind of dig this out. I've been wanting to find a way to express, or kind of get this band out to more people. They were so they were from Glasgow in the mid to late 90s. They formed in 1995, and they're actually kind of like a rotating cast of characters. They weren't really, I think they ended up with like 9 different people rotated in and out of the band. One of the guys from that band, Biz, Sci-Fi Steven, he played with them early on. And Craig B., who went on to form Areogram, he joined
for the 2 records that ended up being released in the U.S. There's a bunch of EPs that I really haven't heard very much at all that from their earlier days, because those never got a U.S. release. But they're 2 albums, Hammock Style. Well, and the second one's an EP, Canopy. Their last 2, those were put out by Merge in the late '90s here, which even back then was a pretty big label for an indie label. And they came here and they toured with Mogwai when they came through here, but I was too young to see them on that tour, because in Seattle the club was 21 and up where they played. So, and I was about 18 or 19 at the time, so I was just a couple of years too young. And so I didn't get to see them. They broke up kind of shortly after that, so I didn't get to see them on tour. But they were instrumental, and they wrote some long songs, but they weren't really like Mogwai-esque. They kind of get associated with krautrock a bit, I think, because of the rhythms and the consistency of the way that they play. And I guess somewhere between post-rock and krautrock, if you have to pin it down to a genre, was sort of what they ended up sounding like on Hammock Style and Canopy. But I think Hammock Style especially, and that album came out in '98, the song I picked, Capo South of Caspian, is like in the middle of that one. I think it's a really, really, really solid album, and the song itself, they're mostly instrumental, so it's, there's not a lyric to latch onto so much. There's one or two lines in it, but it's got, and I didn't mean to just go with the name of the podcast or, but it's got this beat that is like a through line. It's not a complicated beat. It's not a complicated beat at all. It's not particularly like tricky, but it's like right there in the middle, and everything else kind of weaves around it. Like the bass lines come in and drop out, guitar lines come in and drop out, things kind of come and go, but this rhythm kind of stays the same for I want to say about 5 minutes, and then that's about the halfway mark, and then they change it, and then from there it turns into a more kind of post rock as we know it, like the classic like building up to a big noisy finale. But I find the first half actually more compelling, which is
interesting.
Which is it's not the part that builds up, but that's the part where things kind of come and go, and it's very liquid in this really interesting way, and very immaculately played. So I think definitely a historically underrated, underappreciated band. I found like one thing on like Magnets, the magazine Magnets website, where like somebody wrote a little paragraph calling it a lost classic, but that's like all I can really find about them. Aside,
wow.
I don't know, but back in the day when me and my friends were into Mogwai and into post rock and stuff, like because of the Glasgow Association, because they toured Mogwai, we and because they were on Merge Records, we assumed that they were like kind of a big. We took them really seriously. We were like, this is a great band. They're totally a big deal, and I don't know, like we loved it. Like we loved them. We loved the records. I don't know. I don't know why some bands get remembered better than others.
Isn't it funny? Isn't it like, what's the formula for that?
Right.
Yeah. Jack, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, this was definitely in my wheelhouse for sure. I mean, I think something that keeps coming up when you think about post-rock is this idea of democracy, like no one's taking the lead on anything, so everyone's kind of trading ideas between them, and that's so the case in this track, and particularly in that first half, and almost to an extent where it feels like you've got the kind of an indecision of committee going on, but in a way which feels very intentional, where everyone's kind of brewing ideas between them, but very tentatively, and they're kind of blue skied, and then they're just dispersed with, and then they kind of gradually glide onto something else. And also all of the guitars are kind of playing in a similar pitch range as well, so they all sort of interlink and weave into each other in a way which makes them very difficult to pick apart. It's almost difficult to tell which guitar is doing what and to distinguish them from each other, which I thought is really fabulous. That drum beat that you mentioned is so cool because it's got lots of gaps in it, and so it gets a bit of momentum and then stops, and it almost feels like a means of stopping them from doing that cliche post-rock thing, because the rhythm never gets going enough to sort of crank them into a higher gear, at least for that like first 5 minutes. So that means instead of going higher, they have to go sort of horizontally, and that's why they end up doing all this strange harmonic stuff and interesting ideas that are sort of just rearranging the parts and meshing them back together again. So I thought that was really cool. I agree with you. I think the first half is so much more interesting. I think the second half is still great, and the drum beat kind of locks into a beat which allows them all to pile in on top, and then it does get noisier, but it doesn't get there's not like a big boom where it kind of breaks in and then everything flares up. It sort of just gradually gathers speed, and it's almost like lobbing a rock down a hill or something. It's just gradually gathering and gathering and gathering. I love it. There's a really strange sense of there not really being a first beat for a lot of it as well. There's not really like a point where everything kicks in. Yeah, it was great. And it definitely I found on the internet when looking for more information, just very little to go on, but just a lot of comments on videos being like, I can't believe this is the only fucking Ganger thing on YouTube. So it seems that either people know the band and are outraged there's not more, or just don't know the band at all, which is nice. And I wonder whether that will break at some point and people will just, it will be thrust to the surface, but we'll see. Maybe this podcast. Lizzie, what do you think?
So I think it's really I think a little bit of a disclosure. I say post rock isn't really my thing. Who did we go to see? We went to see Explosions in the Sky.
Yeah.
I really hated it.
Oh, nice.
But I could totally appreciate it for what it was, but I really hated it because I do quite like vocalists and lyrics and kind of like a little bit of structure. So a little bit of disclosure there. This isn't really my thing, but the things that I really did like about the track was, and I mean this in a really accessible way, and that I found it really lovely to listen to. It felt like I was at a band practice, and you know how you stand outside other studios' doors and you can hear the bands practicing?
Yeah.
It sounded a little bit like that to me, which I found really and kind of like homely, and I definitely felt like this would be, I think I would have really enjoy it live. It's definitely not something that I would listen to, because like quite long tracks that build and kind of shift every kind of few minutes, that's never really landed with me. But I can imagine that live you really get into a good groove with it, and at the end like it feels awesome and everybody claps really loud because you've all gone through this quite epic thing together.
Yeah, for sure.
So I definitely could like see that with it. I found a really nice bit in the middle, again, only with the headphones on, not off the headphones. It's like about halfway through, there's these kind of like, I don't know what they are, but to me they sounded like kind of bouncy, muted steel pans.
Right.
I don't know. I kind of found it buried in there, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. It is like, for me, I think of this kind of music as like just a nice long jam, and I feel like when they change into a different kind of like section, like they give each other the nod.
Right. Yeah.
And I was seeing the bits where like they would nod. But so the track wasn't really for me, but actually hearing about it from you guys, that I find really interesting, that they're kind of just like, so were they are you saying that these guys were like one of the first, or were they around at the same time as Mogwai and stuff?
They would have been starting around the same time, because they formed in 95, which is basically when Mogwai started getting together too. So
like, one just kind of like landed differently to the other, I suppose.
Yeah, I reckon this album was maybe, when did this album come out? Was it 98? Was it 97?
98. Yeah. 98 for this album.
It might have been just slightly too late, because Tortoise had kicked off by that point, another big post-rock band. Mogwai had a big album out already by that point as well. I mean, I know they had releases prior to this one as well, but perhaps, the record that sort of got them in front of the right people just landed at a time where it was just late enough for them to be seen as part of an existing crop, and maybe following the trail rather than actually just blazing their own.
Yeah, I think the way they started too, I mean, because they started as kind of a loose collective, they never really solidified in that way.
Right.
I think they kept that kind of spirit of lineup change going, and so because they never solidified, people never felt as dedicated, so people kind of came and went, and I think that maybe it just sort of went away, as opposed to getting together and breaking up in a dramatic way that other bands do. I think it just kind of started and stopped, and that's
what the track, which is kind of nice.
Well, and what you're saying about and what you're saying, Lizzie, about jamming, I mean, I think really more than anything, the band were just jamming, you know. And so I think that's absolutely spot on in that what you're saying.
I feel bad about it though, because it's so lovely to hear like people that are so passionate about it, and I'm like, nah, I didn't like it. But don't worry, I'm going to do the same Jack's track, so it's fine.
We have one more track today, and it is mine. It's a track by Fuck Buttons, and it's a track called The Red Wing. So Fuck Buttons are a duo from Bristol in England. Benjamin Power, who also makes music as Blank Mass, and then Andrew Hung as well. So the track I picked is from the album Slow Focus, which was released in 2013, and it starts with this massive beat, this big old stumbling beat, which has got this disco kind of thing going on where it goes boo woo like that, and a lot of kind of shakers and things that sound like crockery and glasses being jangled around. It's quite a cumbersome, lumbering thing, and this is a big kind of statement, I think, for Fuck Buttons coming out with a beat like this, because prior to this point they'd been a little bit more abstract and a little bit more serrated, and this is almost quite a commercial move to start a track like that. And it's from that point onwards that things do get gradually louder and louder. So you have this gigantic bass synth that comes in with this lovely melody that I've loved since I first heard this track, and I still do. And then they add more and more layers until it reaches saturation point. And then they cram in a few more after that as well. So you've got these synthesized kind of string sounds, you've got this huge distorted like drone power chords kind of things, and you can still hear the sounds that you heard during the intro, that little disco sound, but it's been crushed right to the back beneath all of this stuff. And to me, the way that they've kind of produced this track reminds me of when you've got a bin and it's pretty much full, so you put your palm on top and crush everything downward to fit more in. There's kind of like a real merciless way that they just allow everything to be flattened so that they can pile more stuff on top. I just think it's wonderful. Like, it's an incredibly loud track, particularly when it reaches the end, and it just fills every single speck of stereo space in quite a sort of graceless way, really. It just wants to be loud, and that's about it. I saw him perform at Glastonbury, and that's where I first heard this song. I've been into them up until this point, but I'd not heard this album yet. I went over to the stage where they're performing, and there was like no one there. I think they were on at the same time as Rolling Stones and Public Enemy, so
Ooh.
you know, yeah, great slot for anyone. And you know, so it's pretty much empty, but this song came in and they were kind of doing some strange stuff with their silhouettes where they were being projected in these kind of psychedelic patterns and stuff. But I just remember having, you know, a fabulous time with about 20 people. I love it. So Ian, what do you think of this track?
Yeah. Is this the Olympics were in 2012 and this came out in 2013, right? So
right. Yeah.
would this have been like a commercial move for them to capitalize on the exposure of being in the Olympics? Or?
Potentially. I feel like that they were kind of going in this direction anyway, to a certain extent, because Benjamin Power, one of the chaps in the band who makes music as Blank Mass, was starting to work, I think, with these very large synth sounds anyways. So they might have headed in this direction. Or yeah, as you say, it may have just been a move to capitalize on that moment for them, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's got such a great like throb to it, and it really is like, and it's funny because I remember being really obsessed with these guys for their first two albums in 08 and 09, and I saw them whenever they came into town here in New York, and you know, got really psyched to see them. But then there's a gap there between of like 4 years between that one, and I know that's and Slow Focus, and I know that's when the guy was starting to do Blank Mass and things like that. But it is kind of coming back with a different sound from those two records, and I've always been kind of curious about what. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of that's natural evolution too, but also wondering, being in America, I don't know, like if being in the Olympics, which is still wild to me, the band with that name was featured so heavily in the Olympic ceremony. It's like such a coup. But I mean, did they get bigger after that? Did they sell a bunch of records?
I mean, this was a big record in the year that it came out, and it was on a lot of like year-end lists and stuff. I think the fact also that they were at Glastonbury and headlining that stage was testament to the fact that they had quite a bit of momentum at that point. I think people have forgotten them since, but certainly at that time they were doing all right.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I feel like they were bigger in the US around the first two records because there was a lot of website internet like hype around them for those two, but I don't remember I don't remember Slow Focus getting like a ton of attention over here, or maybe just other things were getting attention. It was well reviewed certainly and well received, but I don't remember the same level of hype, or I don't know. I didn't see him on tour. I'm not sure, but and they've been away for a while, right? I mean, I've seen Blank Mass. I've seen Blank Mass a couple times since he's come through town and played a couple times. I've seen him. That's incredibly noisy. That's a great live show. It hurt, man. It hurt. It was like. The venue he played, the acoustics are very in a way that was not. I was kind of like, gosh, why is he playing this place? And it was very sharp, but it was good. It's a good set.
Like when you feel it the next day and you're like, I am in pain. My whole body is in pain.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Lizzie, what do you reckon of this one?
Yeah. So
great.
These kind of long songs that all kind of seem to build to this crescendo and then kind of like fade away a little bit. No, this is really cool. I will forever be impressed by two people that can make that amount of noise. Sure. That is super impressive. Yeah. I really enjoy the intro because it made me think of Spoons and Glasses. Yeah. Well, I said the intro. I think it's there for the whole song.
Yeah,
like, clunk,
it is.
Clunk, 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 clunk.
Yeah,
it's not that.
It gets buried,
Yeah, it really makes me think of like cafes and like background noise and like spoons and glasses, maybe at the start of a musical, and then it goes into something. Oh, no. I really like the woo bit. Yeah. That was fun. Other than that, like, it's a super cool song. That guitar is really heavy and weighty and really, really like pins it down, because then you have these kind of ghostly, echoey blips that are a little bit more complex, but that kind of is always there. So that I felt like that was a really nice contrast, and like that. This is a cool song. Like, this is super cool.
Do you mean cool as I get the impression you're saying cool as someone who doesn't find it cool but sees it could have.
It's a badass.
It could be
song.
Hit. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, this is a badass song that would well have been used for the Olympics. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's I think that's what I mean. There's definitely like the similarities with Ian's track, and that it kind of definitely builds that kind of 2/3 of the way in roughly. It all feels like it's all too much, and oh my god, my headphones are going to break. Yeah. And I do enjoy that. And when you do think that it's two people, that's incredible. I liked the end when we got there. As you can tell, Ian, I kind of like my songs about 4 minutes.
Yeah. I'm with you for the most part.
But I did really like the end with the bells that kind of say goodbye. That's quite nice. It kind of like cleanses the ritual of what you've been through. So yeah, I think it's a badass song.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So you like the bit at the beginning before all the noise comes in, and then the bit at the end where it's stripped away. So I think, process of elimination, get rid of the noise, bring it down to 4 minutes.
That is impressive noise. That is very impressive. So it's two people. Like, how does it work live? Do they just have lots of laptops and stuff?
I think they've got, I don't know, Ian, you may know, but I think it's like a lot of synthesizers, maybe a bit of laptops, probably some stuff that's triggered as well. all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I remember when I would see them. Yeah, they'd have a table. The table would be covered in equipment. They would stand on opposite sides of the table, face each other, and then the one guy would put the little toy recorder microphone in his mouth and start screaming, and that's when it all started kicking off. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
See, I think again
times.
the same with your pick, Ian. I would love this live. I would absolutely love both of these live. I think in the moment, I think listening to it is quite for both of the nature of these tracks is always going to be quite detached, perhaps more so than other music.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah.
All right, I'll give you that. An interesting array of opinions on this week's Fantastic Beats. Ian, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Ian, you need to tell everyone a little bit more about your book.
Yes.
So yeah, Appetite for Definition, A to Z Guide to Rock Genres. Yeah, it's got over 200 different genres and subgenres of rock music. But it's not a dry encyclopedia. It's got a narrative to it. It's based on interviews and research. Talked to a bunch of different folks for it, including you, Jack. Thank you so much for that, by the way.
Hey, no worries.
And yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the idea is to kind of tell a story through genre itself, and hopefully that comes across. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Good. Glad to hear it. And I don't know what shops it would be available in over there. It's definitely available on Amazon UK. The publisher in the US, HarperCollins, has a branch over there that handled the publication in the UK. So it's available online. As far as what stores, I'm not sure because I'm not over there and haven't been able to go stalk myself in bookstores over there. So
nice.
But it should be available. Should be available.
Wicked. Call ahead at your local bookstore. See if they got it or can get it in.
Or Google it because it has the best title ever.
Yeah, it's got a good title.
It's fun. The fight. It was a joke, and it was always meant to. I came up with it as a bad joke, and then when I was talking to the editor, I'm like, yeah, I was like, we could change the title or whatever. She's like, why would we want to change the title? I'm like,
why?
I don't know.
I wish my bad jokes got that kind of traction.
Very good budget. I'm totally with that.
Yeah.
When Jack showed me the book, the first thing I did was I was like,
it's exactly the reaction I was going for. So good.
Amazing. Man, so if people want to keep up to date with what you're doing, Ian, bad jokes and music journalism, all that kind of thing, is there a website that you can direct people to? IanFking.com, IANFKING.com. All my writing, it's collected there. And I write for Stereogum, Under the Radar, Line of Best Fit, different sites. Wicked. And Lizzie, if people want to keep abreast of what we're doing on Fantastic Beats, what should they be doing?
Yeah, so they can find us on Twitter at fantastic_pod. Or you can go on our website, fantasticbeatspodcast.com. Or if you have something to say about this episode or you'd like to be on a show with us, you can email hello at Jack, what is it? Shit.
Hello at fantasticbeatspodcast.com.
Yeah.
that one. Nicely done. Absolutely pro as always. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.